The news spread like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every corner of the galaxy knew about the black ship, the impossible ship. The human ship. High Arbiter Thiessen sat alone in his private chambers. Reports covered his desk. Messages filled his screens. Every species in the Empire was talking about the same thing, but no one could give him the answers he needed. Who were the humans? Why had they come? And why was everyone so afraid? He opened the channel to Ambassador Kethra. The old Morvani appeared on his screen. She looked different than before. There was something in her eyes that he did not like. Something that looked like victory. "You know about these humans," Thiessen said. It was not a question. "I know what everyone knows, High Arbiter. Stories, legends, whispers passed down through generations." "Then tell me these stories." Kethra leaned back in her chair. 300 years ago, the humans fought a war. Not against another species. Against themselves? Civil war? That is common among young species. This was not a civil war, High Arbiter. This was something else. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had bombs that could poison stars. And they used them. Kethra paused. They cracked their own moon. By accident. A weapon test that went wrong. A mistake that nearly ended their species. Thiessen frowned. If they nearly destroyed themselves, how are they a threat? Because they stopped. Kethra's voice was quiet now. They stood at the edge of extinction, looked into the darkness, and chose to step back. They chose to stay on their planet. To rebuild. To wait. She met his eyes through the screen. They were not hiding from the galaxy, High Arbiter. They were protecting it. From themselves. Thiessen did not respond. He ended the call and opened another file. Reports from other species. Other encounters with humans. The first report came from the builders of Kryn. They were an insectoid species, ancient and proud. 200 years ago, a human ship had entered their space. A small vessel. A mining ship with 17 crew members. The builders had surrounded them with a war fleet. They had demanded surrender. They had threatened death. The humans had not surrendered. They had not fought either. They had talked in 3 hours. Those 17 human miners had convinced the Builder Hive Queen to sign a trade agreement. The humans left with rare minerals worth more than most planets. The builders received recipes. Cooking recipes. Instructions for making food. That the strange thing was, the builders still believed they had gotten a better deal. 200 years later, they still could not explain why. Thiessen moved to the next report. This one came from the Hollowborn, a species that lived in the empty spaces between stars. They had no bodies. They were creatures of pure energy. They had existed for millions of years, and had never communicated with any other species, until they met a human exploration vessel. The humans had talked to them. Somehow, through methods the report did not explain. And the Hollowborn had answered. For the first time in their existence, they had chosen to speak to another species. When asked why, the Hollowborn had given a simple answer. They were interesting. Report after report told the same story. Humans did not conquer. They did not destroy. They adapted. They talked. They made friends with species that had no concept of friendship. They survived environments that should have killed them instantly. They held grudges for generations and forgave debts in moments, following rules that no one else could understand. They were unpredictable. They were illogical. They were chaos given flesh. And now one of their warships. A real warship, not a mining vessel or an exploration ship, was sitting in the heart of the Velkari Empire. Waiting, Thiessen called his military advisors. They gathered in the war room, 20 of the finest strategic minds in the Empire. They studied the black ship. They analyzed its design. They tried to understand its technology. They failed. The hull material is unknown, the chief scientist reported. It absorbs all scanning frequencies. We cannot see inside. We cannot determine its weapons, or its crew size, or its power source. It is a complete mystery. Then guess, Thiessen ordered. Based on its size, based on what little we know, what can this ship do? The scientist hesitated. If the stories about humans are true, if they really did crack their own moon 3 centuries ago, then this ship could be capable of anything. They have had 300 years to improve their technology. 300 years to prepare. Prepare for what? No one answered. No one knew. On the water world of Yenth, the scholars continued their prayers. Their oldest books spoke of the humans. Ancient texts written by species that no longer existed. The texts called humans by many names. The persistent ones, the adapters, the survivors. But one name appeared more often than any other. A name that made the scholars tremble. The inheritors. The books said that humans were not like other species. They did not evolve to fit their environment. They changed their environment to fit themselves. They did not accept limits. They broke them. They did not follow the natural order. They created their own order, and the books contained a prophecy, a warning from species long dead. When the humans leave their world, the age of empires will end. A new age will begin. Those who are kind will be lifted up. Those who are cruel will be cast down. And nothing will stop them. Nothing can stop them, because they do not know how to stop. Thiessen did not believe in prophecies. He believed in ships and soldiers and the power of the empire. But as he sat in his chambers that night, watching the black ship float silently in his system, he could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. For 12,000 years, the Velkari had been the strongest. They had taken what they wanted. They had crushed anyone who stood against them. The galaxy had belonged to them. But now there was something else out there. Something that had disabled 40 warships without firing a shot. Something that had sent a single word across the stars. Waiting. Thiessen made his decision. He would not wait. He would not show fear. He would remind the galaxy why the Velkari Empire had ruled for so long. Prepare a response fleet, he ordered. Not 40 ships. 4,000. We will show these humans what happens to those who challenge us. His advisors rushed to obey. But as they left, Thiessen saw something in their eyes. Something that had never been there before. The humans had been watching the galaxy for 300 years, waiting, preparing. And now, finally, they had made their move. Whatever came next, Thiessen knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Velkari Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their ships numbered in the millions. Their soldiers were without count. 400 different species lived under their rule across 9,000 worlds. Every planet paid tribute. Every species bowed. The Velkari had never known defeat. They had never known fear. Until today, High Arbiter Thiessen stood in the command center of the Imperial Palace. The room was made of living crystal that grew from the bones of the planet itself. Hundreds of officers worked at their stations. Screens covered every wall, showing the vastness of the empire. Everything was peaceful. Everything was controlled. Then a single alarm broke the silence. High Arbiter, an officer called out. His voice was shaking. We have a contact. Inside the throne system. Thiessen turned slowly. Inside? Nothing enters the throne system without our knowledge. The detection grids would see a ship from 10 light years away. The grids saw nothing, High Arbiter. The quantum barriers did not trigger. The fold space inhibitors did not activate. The officer swallowed hard. The ship is simply ... there, as if it appeared from nothing. Thiessen walked to the main display. His tall, armored body cast a long shadow across the crystal floor. He had commanded fleets. He had crushed rebellions. He had burned worlds that refused to submit. Nothing surprised him anymore, but what he saw on the screen made him stop breathing. The ship was black. Not the black of painted metal, but a deeper black. It seemed to eat the light around it. The design was brutal and ugly. Sharp angles. No curves, no beauty. It looked like a weapon that someone had taught to fly. "What is it?" Thiessen asked quietly. "Unknown, High Arbiter. The hull material does not match any known alloy. The energy signature is. We cannot read it. Our sensors do not understand what they are seeing." Thiessen stared at the ship. It was not large by Imperial standards. One of his dreadnoughts could destroy it easily. Or so he thought. "Hail them," he ordered. The communications officer worked his controls. "All frequencies open, High Arbiter." No response. "Hail them again." Still no response. The ship is not reacting to our signals at all. Thiessen felt something cold move through his chest. He had conquered species that could destroy stars. He had defeated enemies that lived in the vacuum of space itself. But this ship, this silent black ship, made him feel like a child looking into a dark room. "Send a patrol wing," he commanded. 40 ships. Surround the vessel. Demand their surrender. The patrol wing launched within minutes. 40 warships, each one capable of destroying a moon. They moved in perfect formation toward the black ship. Their weapons powered up. Their shields activated. They were the finest ships in the finest fleet in the galaxy. The black ship did not move. "Patrol wing in position," the tactical officer reported. "They are broadcasting the surrender demand." On the screen, Thiessen watched his ships form a sphere around the intruder. Their weapons pointed inward. There was no escape. No possibility of survival if the stranger chose to fight. The black ship's hull flickered. Just once. A ripple of something that might have been light, or might have been something else entirely. Then every single warship in the patrol wing went dark. "Report." Thiessen shouted. "What happened?" The tactical officer was pale. His hands were shaking as he checked his readings. "The ships. They are disabled. High Arbiter. Every system. Weapons, engines, shields, communications. Everything is offline. But ... He looked up with wide eyes. "The crews are alive. Life support is functioning. They are simply sitting there, powerless. That is impossible. No weapon can do that. No technology can, High Arbiter." The communications officer cut him off. His voice was barely a whisper. "We are receiving a transmission from the black ship." The main screen changed. There was no image, no face, just a single word written in the old Valkyrie script, written in the trade language of the Empire, written in the sacred text of the Morvani, written in every language the Empire had ever recorded. One word. One message. Waiting. The SS, and read the word again and again. Waiting. What did it mean? Waiting for what? For orders? For reinforcements? For something worse? "Send this information to all sectors," he commanded. "I want every ship captain, every planetary governor, every military commander to see this. Find out what this vessel is. Find out where it came from. Find out everything." The message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. It reached every corner of the Empire within hours. And as it spread, something strange began to happen. The old species, the ones who had hidden from the Valkyrie for generations, the ones who remembered a time before the Empire existed, they began to react. not with confusion, not with curiosity, not with terror. On the water world of Yenth, the ancient scholars locked themselves in their libraries and began to pray to gods they had not spoken to in centuries. In the dust clouds of the Kethron Nebula, the nomad fleets changed course. They ran. They did not say where they were going. They did not say why. On the frozen moon of Threl, the last of the elder minds woke from a sleep that had lasted 10,000 years. It looked at the image of the black ship. It made a sound that its caretakers had never heard before. It screamed. Ambassador Kethra of the Morvani Collective received the message aboard a diplomatic station. She was old, even by the standards of her long-lived species. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched the Velkari crush her people under their boots. She had learned to bow, to submit, to survive. But when she saw the black ship, she did not bow. She laughed. Her attendants rushed to her side, thinking she was having a medical emergency. But Kethra pushed them away. Tears streamed down her face as she laughed and laughed and laughed. "You fools," she whispered, looking at the Valkyrie diplomats who shared the station. "You absolute fools. Do you know what that ship is? Do you know who built it?" The Valkyrie diplomats shook their heads. Kethra smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had waited a very, very long time for this moment. "The humans," she said. "The humans have finally left Earth." The Valkyrie diplomats did not understand. Humans? They had heard the name, perhaps. A minor species. A young species. Confined to a single planet on the edge of nowhere. But Kethra understood. And as she watched the confusion on their faces, she felt something she had not felt in decades. Hope that the humans had come, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. On the third day, the black ship opened. High Arbiter Thiessen was in the middle of planning his attack when the alert came. A small craft had launched from the human vessel. It was moving toward the planet, toward the Imperial Palace itself. "Destroy it," Thiessen ordered. 800 defense platforms locked onto the shuttle. Weapons charged. Targeting systems aligned. Enough firepower to vaporize a small moon pointed at the tiny craft. Nothing happened. "High Arbiter," the weapons officer said slowly, "our systems are not responding. The platforms see the target, but they will not fire." Thiessen watched the shuttle descend through the atmosphere. It moved slowly, almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the world. As if the 800 weapons pointed at it meant nothing at all, because they did mean nothing. The humans had proven that already. The shuttle landed in the central plaza of the Imperial Palace. 10,000 armed guards surrounded it, their weapons raised. Thiessen himself walked out to meet it, flanked by his personal guard. If the humans wanted to talk, he would talk. But he would do it on his terms. The shuttle door opened. The human who stepped out was not what Thiessen expected. She was small, barely reaching his chest. Her body was soft, with no armor, no visible weapons. She had brown skin, dark hair streaked with gray, and lines around her eyes that suggested age. By human standards, she appeared to be in her middle years. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations, no medals, no signs of rank. She looked like a worker, not a warrior, but her eyes. Her eyes were something else. They were calm and steady, and when she looked at Thiessen, he felt like she was seeing everything about him. Every victory, every defeat, every secret he had ever kept. She walked across the plaza alone. 10,000 weapons followed her every step. She did not seem to notice. She stopped in front of Thiessen and smiled politely, as if they were meeting at a social event instead of a confrontation between empires. "My name is Captain Elena Vasquez," she said. Her voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "I am here about the Morvani." Thesan straightened to his full height, towering over her. The Morvani are imperial subjects. Their affairs are internal matters of the Empire. 3 of their colony worlds were sterilized last cycle. Vasquez's voice did not change. Her smile did not waver. But something in her eyes grew cold. 17 billion dead. Because they requested autonomy. They were rebellious. They refused to pay tribute. They defied imperial law, your law. Vasquez tilted her head slightly. Not ours. She reached into her pocket. Every guard tensed. Weapons hummed with power. But Vasquez only pulled out a small device, no larger than her palm. She pressed a button. A holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed a map of the galaxy, with the Volcari Empire marked in red. The empire was vast. It covered nearly a quarter of the known galaxy. It was the largest political entity in existence. Then new markers appeared. Blue dots of light. They were everywhere. Inside the empire. Outside it. In regions the Volcari had mapped as empty. In systems they had never explored. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Human settlements, Vasquez said quietly. Hidden, watching. We have been here for centuries, Arbiter. Learning. Waiting to see if you would grow past this phase. Past the conquering. The cruelty. The murder of billions. She pressed the button again, and the display disappeared. You have not. Thesan stared at the space where the map had been. Thousands of human settlements. Inside his empire. How long had they been there? What had they seen? What did they know? Your ship disabled my patrol wing, he said slowly. How? We asked them to turn off. Vasquez shrugged. They agreed. Ships do not agree to anything. They are machines, not to us. There was something in her voice that Thesan did not understand. Something that suggested depths he could not see. We have learned to talk to many things, Arbiter, machines, energy beings. Species that exist in dimensions you cannot perceive. It is what we do. We communicate. We connect. And if we refuse to communicate with you? Vasquez looked at him for a long moment. My ship is old, Arbiter. By our standards, it is outdated. A relic from a previous era. It disabled 40 of your warships without firing a shot. She paused. I am not here to threaten you. I am here to inform you. The Morvani have requested human protection. We have granted it. All Morvani worlds are now under Earth's protection. That is an act of war. No. Vasquez shook her head. War is what happens when both sides can fight. This is something else. This is us telling you to stop. Not asking. Telling. The Morvani are ours now. So are the Kreth, the Hollow-born, the singing moons of Virith. Every species that has asked for our help. Thesan felt his anger rising. You cannot simply claim our subjects. You cannot dictate terms to the Volcari Empire. I just did. She turned to walk back to her shuttle. Thesan raised his hand. His guards stepped forward, weapons aimed at her back. And if we refuse? He called. If we take our fleet and crush your protected species anyway? What then? Vasquez stopped. She turned back to face him, and for just a moment her pleasant expression flickered. What lay beneath it made Thesan's blood run cold. Then I leave, she said, and someone else comes. Someone less diplomatic. She walked to her shuttle. At the door, she paused and looked back one final time. You have ruled through fear for 12,000 years, Arbiter. Fear and pain and death. You think you understand these things. You think you are masters of them. Her voice was soft now, almost sad. We wrote the book on fear. We perfected it. We became so good at it that we nearly destroyed ourselves and everything we loved. And then we learned. We learned that there were better ways. She stepped into the shuttle. I hope you learned that too. Before it is too late. The shuttle lifted off. It rose through the atmosphere, past the defense platforms that could not fire, past the warships that could not move. It returned to the black ship, which sat in the void like a hole in the stars. Thiessen stood in the plaza for a long time after she was gone. His guards waited in silence. No one knew what to say. Finally, Thiessen turned and walked back into the palace. His face was hard. His eyes were bright with fury. "Assemble the fleet," he commanded. "All of it. Every ship we have. We will show these humans what the Velkari Empire does to those who challenge us." His officers rushed to obey. The greatest military force in galactic history began to mobilize. Millions of ships. Billions of soldiers. All of it aimed at one goal, but deep in his heart, in a place he would never admit existed, Thiessen remembered the look in Captain Vasquez's eyes. The calm certainty. The absolute lack of fear. She had not been afraid. Not of him. Not of his guards. Not of his entire empire. And that, more than anything else, terrified him. The Empire did not learn. High Arbiter Thiessen gathered the largest fleet in galactic history. 300,000 warships. Vessels from every corner of the Empire. Dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Carriers filled with millions of fighters. Enough firepower to burn a dozen worlds. All of it aimed at the Morvani homeworld. Thiessen would make an example. He would show the galaxy what happened to those who defied the Empire. He would show the humans that their protection meant nothing. The fleet traveled for 3 days through fold space. When they emerged above the Morvani homeworld, Thiessen expected to see a planet trembling in fear. He expected to see refugees fleeing, cities burning, a species preparing to die. Instead, he saw 6 ships. 6 human vessels hung in orbit around the planet. They were larger than the one that had visited the throne system, but not by much. Against 300,000 Velkari warships that looked like insects facing a storm, Thiessen smiled. This would be easy. All ships, he broadcast across the fleet channel, prepare to engage. Destroy the human vessels. Then begin orbital bombardment of the primary population centers. 300,000 ships moved forward. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked. The greatest military force ever assembled, prepared to unleash its fury. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Thiessen watched from his command ship as his fleet fell apart. The human vessels did not fire weapons that he could see. There were no beams of light, no missiles, no explosions. Ships simply stopped working, thousands at a time. Their engines died. Their weapons went dark. Their crews screamed into communicators that no longer transmitted. "What is happening?" Thiessen shouted, "Report! Someone report!" "We do not know, High Arbiter," his tactical officer stammered. "Some kind of signal. It is affecting our systems. All of them. We cannot stop it." One by one, the Velkari ships went silent. Not destroyed. That would have been cleaner, easier to understand. Instead, they were simply switched off. Their crews floated in darkness, alive but helpless. Their weapons pointed at nothing. Their engines drifted cold. In 11 minutes. 300,000 warships became 300,000 pieces of metal floating in the void. The 6 human ships had not moved. They had not even changed formation. They simply hung there, as if nothing had happened. As if defeating the greatest fleet in galactic history had required no effort at all. Thiessen's command ship was one of the last to fall. He felt the moment when his systems died. The lights went out. The engines stopped humming. The screens went black. In the darkness, a single message appeared on his personal communicator. Text only. Simple words in the Valkyrie language. We could have killed you. We chose not to. Think about what that means. For 3 days, Thiessen sat in the dark with his crew. Life support still worked. Food dispensers still functioned. But they could not move, could not communicate, could not do anything but wait. When the Empire's rescue ships finally arrived, they found the fleet exactly where it had stopped. Every ship was recovered. Every crew member was alive. Not one person had died in the battle. There was not really a battle at all. The news spread across the galaxy, faster than light itself. The Valkyrie Empire, the most powerful force in existence, had sent its entire military against 6 human ships. And the humans had defeated them without killing a single person. Without even trying. The reaction was immediate. On 100 worlds, subjugated species stopped working. They did not fight. They did not riot. They simply stopped. Factory workers set down their tools. Miners left their tunnels. Servants walked away from their masters. They sat in the streets, in the fields, in the corridors of power, and they did nothing. When the Valkyrie authorities demanded they return to work, they received the same answer everywhere. The same words, spoken in 1,000 different languages. We request human protection. The requests numbered in the billions. Every species the Empire had ever conquered, every world they had ever taken, every people they had ever ground beneath their boots, all of them, all at once. Asked the humans for help. And the humans answered. They did not come with fleets. They did not come with weapons. They came with people. Human diplomats appeared at negotiating tables. Human doctors opened clinics in the poorest districts. Human engineers fixed broken infrastructure. Human teachers set up schools in refugee camps. They did not conquer. They did not demand. They simply helped. They talked to the oppressed and listened to their stories. They taught them how to organize, how to resist, how to demand better. They showed them that they did not have to be afraid anymore. Thiessen watched his empire crumble, not through war, but through something worse. Something he had no defense against. Irrelevance. Species that had feared the Valkyrie for millennia simply ignored them now. Why obey an empire when a human with a smile and a toolkit could solve more problems in a day than Valkyrie bureaucracy solved in a year? Why pay tribute to conquerors when the humans asked for nothing in return? The empire's economy collapsed. Without slave labor, without tribute, without the fear that had held everything together, the system simply stopped working. Valkyrie citizens, who had lived in luxury for generations, suddenly found themselves in a galaxy that did not care about their status. Thiessen grew desperate. His advisors told him there was only one option left, one target that might change everything. Earth, the human homeworld. The source of all of this. If they could strike at Earth itself, if they could show that the humans were not invincible, perhaps the galaxy would remember its fear. Perhaps the old order could be restored. Thiessen gathered every ship that still functioned. It was not a fleet anymore. Just a few thousand vessels, crewed by loyal soldiers who still believed in the Empire. He programmed the coordinates himself. Earth, the blue world at the edge of nowhere. The planet where all of this had begun. The ships entered, fold space, and never arrived. One moment they were traveling through the dimension between dimensions. The next moment they were back where they started, in Valkyrie space, with no memory of the journey. Every navigation computer had been rewritten. Every log had been erased. In their place was a single message, displayed on every screen of every ship. No, just that. One word. The same word the humans had used before. Thiessen sat in his command chair and stared at the message. His hands were shaking. His hearts were racing. For the first time in his long life, he truly understood what he was facing. The humans were not just powerful. They were beyond anything he could comprehend. They could reach into his ships without being detected. They could rewrite his systems without leaving a trace. They could stop his fleet without lifting a finger, and they had chosen not to hurt him. Again and again, they had chosen mercy. That was the most terrifying thing of all. The Velkari Empire had ruled through fear, because fear was all they understood. They had never imagined an enemy who did not want to destroy them. An enemy who simply wanted them to stop. Thiessen looked out the viewport at the stars. His empire was dying. His people were lost. Everything he had built, everything his ancestors had built, was falling apart. And somewhere out there, human ships drifted silently through the void, watching, waiting, not as conquerors, not as enemies, as something far more dangerous, as neighbors who expected better. 1 year had passed since the black ship first appeared in the throne system. 1 year since Captain Elena Vasquez had walked across the Crystal Plaza and changed the galaxy forever. The Velkari Empire was gone. Not destroyed, not conquered, simply dissolved like morning mist under a rising sun. The species that had once trembled before its power now governed themselves. The worlds that had once paid tribute now traded freely. The soldiers who had once enforced imperial law now worked alongside the peoples they had oppressed, building something new. Thiessen sat in a garden on the Morvani homeworld. He was no longer High Arbiter. He was no longer anything, really. Just an old man in a strange place, watching children play in a plaza where his soldiers had once marched. The garden was beautiful. Flowers from 100 worlds grew in careful arrangements. Fountains sparkled in the sunlight. The air smelled sweet and clean. Behind him, the crystal spires of what had once been the Imperial Administration Building rose against the sky. The building had been converted into a hospital. Human doctors worked alongside Morvani healers, treating patients from dozens of species. The sounds of healing had replaced the sounds of command. A shadow fell across his bench. Thiessen looked up to see Captain Vasquez standing before him. She looked the same as she had that day in the plaza, calm, patient. Her eyes still held that quiet certainty that had frightened him so much. She sat down beside him without asking permission. In her hands was a cup of something dark and steaming. She took a sip and made a satisfied sound. "Coffee," she said, noticing his curious look. "A human drink. It helps us wake up in the morning. Would you like to try some?" Thiessen shook his head. They sat in silence for a while, watching the children play. Morvani young ones, with their bright blue skin and wide eyes. Human children, small and loud and full of energy. Other species too, all mixed together, all playing the same games. "I do not understand," Thiessen finally said. Vasquez turned to look at him. "What do not you understand? You could have destroyed us. You could have conquered everything we built, taken our worlds, enslaved our people, done to us what we did to others." He spread his hands helplessly. "Why did you not?" Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. She took another sip of her coffee and stared at the fountain in the center of the garden. 300 years ago, she said softly, "we tried that. On our own world. Conquest, domination, empire." She smiled, but there was no joy in it. "We were very, very good at it. Nation against nation. Ideology against ideology. We invented weapons that could destroy cities in an instant. We built bombs that could poison the earth for generations." She paused, her eyes distant. "We cracked our own moon. Did you know that? A weapon test gone wrong. The explosion was visible from our planet's surface. For 3 days, we did not know if the debris would fall and end all life on Earth." She shook her head slowly. "It did not. We were lucky. But it was close. So close. And that stopped you?" Thiessen asked. "One accident? Not just one accident. It was everything. The wars, the hatred, the millions of dead. We looked at what we had become, and we were horrified. Vasquez turned to face him fully. We nearly destroyed ourselves, Arbiter. We came within days of ending our entire species. And in that moment, in the ash and the silence, we realized something. What? That being the strongest does not matter if there is nothing left worth protecting. Thiessen thought about those words. He thought about the Empire, the conquered worlds, the subjugated species. All that power, all that fear, and what had it given him? An empire of people who hated him. A legacy of pain and death. A throne built on bones. We decided to stay home, Vasquez continued. To rebuild. To learn. To become something better than we had been. It took centuries. There were setbacks, failures, moments when we almost fell back into old patterns. She smiled genuinely this time. But we kept trying. We kept learning. And eventually, we trusted ourselves enough to come back out into the galaxy. To conquer us? No, Vasquez laughed softly. To be neighbors. To help where we could. To protect those who needed protection. Not because we wanted power over them. Not because we wanted them to worship us. Just because it was the right thing to do. Thiessen shook his head. I still do not understand. Your technology is so far beyond ours. Your power is unlimited. You could rule the entire galaxy without effort. Yes, Vasquez agreed. We could. And that is exactly why we do not. She finished her coffee and set the cup aside. In the plaza, a human child had fallen and skinned her knee. A Morvani child was helping her up, dabbing at the wound with careful fingers. Both children were crying a little, but they were smiling too. The point of power is not dominance, Vasquez said. It is responsibility. The stronger you are, the more careful you must be. The more you can do, the more you must think about what you should do. She looked at Thiessen with something that might have been compassion. Your empire failed because you never learned that lesson. You thought strength meant taking. We learned that strength means giving. Thiessen was silent for a long time. The sun moved across the sky. The shadows grew long. The children were called inside by their parents. Still, he sat there, thinking, what am I supposed to do now? He finally asked. Vasquez stood and brushed off her uniform. Whatever you want. That is the point. You are free. Your people are free. The species you conquered are free. What happens next is up to all of you. And you? The humans? We will help if you ask. But we will not rule. We will not decide for you. That is not why we are here. Thiessen looked up at her. His eyes were old and tired, but there was something new in them. Something that had not been there before. Then why are you here? Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Mercy's Edge looked up at the alien stars. She thought of all the species humanity had met in their centuries among the cosmos. The friends they had made. The enemies they had turned into friends. The long, difficult journey from the ashes of their own destruction to this moment, standing in a garden on a world that had once been their enemy's conquest. She thought of home. Of Earth. Of the blue world spinning in the darkness, filled with billions of people who had learned, painfully and slowly, that there was a better way to live, and she gave the answer that humanity had carried across the cosmos, the truth that had guided them through centuries of darkness and brought them out into the light. Because no one should have to be alone, she said, and no one should have to be afraid. She walked away, leaving Thiessen alone in the garden with his thoughts. Across the galaxy, ancient species emerged from hiding. Young civilizations looked to the stars with wonder instead of terror. The Velkari, stripped of their empire, but freed from their hatred. began to learn what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. And in the darkness between stars, human ships drifted silently through the void, watching, waiting, protecting, not as conquerors, not as gods, not as masters, not as good neighbors. In the garden on the Morvani homeworld, Thiessen watched the stars come out one by one. Somewhere up there, the humans were watching back. And for the first time in 12,000 years, he did not feel afraid. He felt hope. The age of empires was over. A new age had begun, and the galaxy, finally, was free.